Hey, and welcome to the Resilience Room, the podcast where we open our doors to special guests from across the cyber industry. Join us as we give them the space to share their passions, discuss their unique careers, and talk about their lives in and out of the cyber world. This time, our guest is Mahdi Raza, founder of CyberX with an S and Cyber BPO with a C. Also, author of The Art of Selling Cybersecurity. Mahdi runs cyber drills and is passionate about empowering the next generation with cyber skills. Drills and skills. Co-hosting is Jamie Knobles, Director of Cyber Resilience and Readiness at Immersive. It's a Director of Resilience on the Resilience Room. Nice. Enjoy the show. In every episode so far, the first question I ask every guest, if you don't mind, is how did you get into cyber?
Great question. I could take you way back, and I was about 12 years old, 11 years old, very young, and my dad brought home this machine, this big box, and he plugged it in with some other weird-looking guy that showed up, very geeky looking guy. And he plugged it in and there's this big monitor on top and he powered it on and it took like 12 minutes and it finally came on. And then he then yelled and told my mom not to pick up the phone, and a bunch of noises came, and suddenly this screen popped up and it was AOL. And I was sitting there looking at it going, like, understanding, like, what is this? And it was the internet. And I was excited. I didn't know what to expect, kind of like what we're dealing with right now with AI. And what was impactful and interesting was AOL, for those listeners out here, had back in the days would give these floppy disks that would give you 30 minutes, 1 hour free. For those shaking their head or smiling and nostalgically, they know exactly what we're talking about. For those that are wondering what even a floppy disk is, forward by about 30 seconds here. I'm joking. And so the time ran out. And I was up one night on a Saturday night after a hockey game. I popped it up. I saw no one, and I tried to log in, and it said, you don't have any credits or you don't have any time. And it said a password. And I was just sitting there, what is the password? And I remember the guy, that geeky, nerdy, very intelligent man that I realized later, years later, drove a Corvette, a red Corvette. And so I typed up red Corvette, and guess what? I got in.
Amazing.
And I was like, and so brute forcing, at 12, not even knowing, just social engineering, just kind of, and I was in, and there's a screen of a whole bunch of stuff. So over the years, that's really what kind of piqued my interest. And as I was young, I loved breaking things, hacking into flipping things upside down, whether it was from cooking to how you get ready in the morning. I was always looking at ways to be efficient, effective, resourceful, and creative and innovative and thinking out of the box. So those are attributes over the years that I've discovered with various cybersecurity professionals in the industry. They all come from a path of exploration. And even if you go back to some of the, oldest hackers from the movie The Hackers, and just people in history that have done unique things, from the worm to, the gang in Detroit and all of that stuff, it was about just breaking things. And so for me, I do not have a formal education in cybersecurity. I did not go to, university for a cybersecurity degree. I was self-taught. I was around a computer for a very long time, breaking it in myself, breaking into things, screwing up things, doing all sorts of things that you shouldn't be doing. And over the years, just discovered. And then as time went on, when you started learning about it, you're like, oh, that's what a DDoS is. When I keep hitting the print screen button at work so that we can take the whole system down and have the day off at work, That's called a DDoS attack, right? So that's not right to do, but it's, so that's where I fell in love with cybersecurity. And then about 9 years ago at CyberX, which we could talk about later on in the journey,
Definitely. Yeah.
that journey kind of accelerates at a dramatic pace, and we'll get into that later on.
Well, I think you're making it sound really fun, all of this, all of cyber, and we've had previous guests on the podcast who, like you, say they enjoyed the idea of breaking things. And I had Hazel on that said IT staff they want to know how something works. Hackers want to know how to break it, basically. And like, I think cybersecurity can have quite this appeal, as though it's almost like a game, right? It's like break the thing. And I know that with your work, you do lean into the gamification of cyber learning quite a bit. Do you want to go into a bit about that? Like, how does gamification, and how do you think that kind of draws people in and appeals to people in cyber?
So the first game I had on that computer was called Track and Field. It was the IBM Track and Field. So keyboard, mouse, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff. And you
just hammer the keys.
Hammer the keys. Who could hammer the fastest is the best. And my generation, Generation X, grew up during the time of the launch of Super Mario, Commodore 64, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and video games. And seeing the evolution of gamification and video games. And when you were young, you would be like, imagine there was this 3D thing where you could be in. Imagine if the graphics were like, you would just think of all these things. But one of the things that video games and today in eSports industry, and I was just at a very amazing eSports location at St. Clair College that have an actual degree and competition. And if you go there and you see the students, they're brilliant. Their hand-eye coordination, the ability to solve problems, the ability to learn from mistakes, whether it's play a better FIFA at soccer and try a different technique, or faster car, or faster gun, or faster. It's a world where you're able to really do everything and anything, and you're not limited or restricted to one single thing. And that's what makes the digital world so great, especially when it comes to gamification. So you take that lens of do anything and everything. And then when I was in cybersecurity, I would sit and a lot of times, and I would speak to people and they would talk to me about security awareness training and how boring it was, how mundane it was, and how repetitive it was. And people would just do it just because they had to do it. Just click, 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 done. That's it. And so I looked at that and I went, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way. So I went back to my days of gamification. And so one of the things that we did was a physical game, which was an escape room. How do you take actual escape rooms for your viewers that have attended an escape room? An escape room is a place where you go into multiple rooms that allow you to reach a certain objective. And then once you do that, you're able to move into another room and another room and another room. And so I said, hey, how do we flip that upside down and bring it into cybersecurity? So we created a home. And in a home environment, made it exactly a living room, TV screen, laptop, iPad. What would be things that you would do? And there we teach people, for example, brute force, and how hackers use social engineering with things around your home, your birth date that you put up, pictures of your dog, et cetera, just like that 1980 Corvette, and you're able to hack in. So when you teach people offensive security through gamification, then they figure out, wait a minute, I got to be a little bit defensive here. And then we have a hacker's room where we teach people on how to set up honeypots, et cetera, from an ethical standpoint. And so gamification in that use case scenario allows people to come together under pressure at a certain time that's physical. They're able to break things, touch things, find a USB, find a note sticky pad, do all these things that they would do in the real world that's tangible. And you teach people through training. And so within the escape rooms, we had students coming in that have never been in an escape room or understand cybersecurity, all the way to pen testers. And what was magnificent and fascinating about it was some of the pen testers or technical people would find it difficult to do some of the basic social engineering things. Whereas the young kids, when it comes to social engineering, would be ripping up couches and all that stuff and finding key pieces of information which allowed them to brute force their way in, which was fascinating. So that was one type of gamification. And then throughout the time, we've built out a bunch of other gamification, which we can dive into a little bit later on. But the end result is this something I would have fun with? That was always my litmus test. And number two was, is this something that's going to teach people something that's going to help them? And I think that's very powerful in gamification when it comes to esports even today.
Yeah. You're just as interested in the kind of the corporate market as you are in teaching the next generation, right? Do you work with kids quite a lot, students quite a lot? And how rewarding is that to see the skills evolve in young people?
So we went to this esports arena at St. Clair College in Windsor, Ontario, which is at the border of Detroit. And they have this fascinating facility there. And they had about 600 high school students from grade 11 at this college that came for the day. And the most popular attraction is the esports arena. And so And what's interesting about the esports arena is it's not just about gaming, it's about learning, it's about broadcasting, it's about, technology, it's about, education. And so esports is a very cool way to bring people. And what's interesting about esports, which is very fascinating as well, is some of the best cybersecurity professionals come from a very deep gaming background, and especially young people with their hands-eye coordination, critical thinking, out of the box, pressure. They're living that life when they're playing video games. So when they now move into the real world and they're dealing with fast screens and looking at things and under pressure and being challenged and variables being flipped on them upside down, they've built this resiliency inside them already, which I think is fascinating from some of the older hackers that you meet or ethical white hackers that you meet that talk about gaming and hear their stories, and then the young generation that's doing it. But it's rewarding because, look, at the end of the day, this next generation that is upon us, that are 15, 16, 18, 19, they're built completely different than the way you and I were built and the way our parents were built. They grew up with an iPad, whereas I had to sit in front of a screen and watch this big thing show up. So a different world, a different time, and we have to understand that this thing here is a tool that could be used as a weapon of mass destruction, but it could also be used as a place to teach and create the next generation to be great people.
Yeah. For listeners, Mahdi, is it do you say Mahdi or Mahdi?
Exact Arabic is exactly how you said it. Sam, what's your background? Where are you from?
I grew up in the UK, basically.
Nice. You got a nice British accent. My wife's British as well. We love our breakfast, our British breakfast, and our jacket.
I like British beer. Well, I like American beer as well, actually. But yeah.
You pronounced it the exact Arabic way, which is correct, which is Mahdi. But majority of people do call me Mahdi, as in
Yeah, I mean Mahdi rolls off the tongue, but I quite like Mahdi. It's a bit more poetic sounding. I don't know.
It is a very poetic name, actually. But yeah,
what I was going to say is when you were just talking about this thing that people have nowadays, you were holding up your smartphone. Are you using smartphones a lot in these, so, I mean, actually explain about CyberX a little bit. Like, what is the general, idea behind it and how does it run and how does it look on it?
Yeah, so CyberX is a cyber ecosystem activator, best way to put it. And what I like to for the listeners as well, cybersecurity is a very profound field, just like the healthcare industry, just like the legal industry, and et cetera, et cetera. But let's take the healthcare industry for a moment. Within the healthcare industry ecosystem, you have practitioners, which is your doctors. But within doctors, you have specialists that are, someone really good with the knee, someone's good with the bone, someone's good with the teeth. And then you move into like the pharmacy side, which is medication, before you get sick, after you get sick. Then you have the actual hospital, which is the physical building. You have nurses, you have ambulance workers, you just have a full ecosystem of just everything that runs on this engine. Cybersecurity is very similar. Precisely even exact in its ecosystem. You have the practitioners, you have experts, because not every expert is an expert in privacy versus offensive security versus red teaming. I have yet to find one person that is an expert on every single thing. And anyone that says they are, please send me a message. I would love to meet you. And so within that same ecosystem, you have folks that train, you have the educators, you have the technology, you have the vendors, you have the nonprofit organizations, you have the B-sides of the world, you have podcasters and education and entertainment and a great organization like Immersive that bring different products and services to the community to make that ecosystem kind of grow. And everything's important. So when we launched CyberX, it was how do we bring the ecosystem together? And one of the things that we decided to do was not be a vendor, not be an MSSP, not be an actual seller of these products. Because I feel when you do that, and a lot of companies do that out there, and they do events and they do that, and RSA, AWS, all these great organizations, you're limited because you're put in a box and you're only bringing in your partners and your vendors. And so you're creating an ecosystem, but it's like just one sort of hospital and you've just got whoever's involved is involved. So think of this as a national hospital, which is just everyone, and everyone's allowed in. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, where you are in your life. So it's an ecosystem activator. And what we've done within CyberX is we have various engagements and opportunities. So one of the events we have, for example, is called CISO Forum Canada, has been running for several years, closed doors, senior leaders only. And that's designed because we also know neurosurgeons want to hang out with neurosurgeons, right? To talk about problems that are happening today, or vaccine manufacturers want to speak with, chemicalists that are specializing in biohazards and et cetera. To speak to someone on a different platform or vertical sometimes doesn't work, but it's great to have. So within the CyberX ecosystem, we did create different compartments that allow young people to participate at their right place and time, and the executives to participate at their right and time. And then just to kind of round it off, what's important is what people need. What a person looking to enter cyber is completely different than to a person who's transitioning cyber. It's completely different to a senior leader who's in privacy. It's completely different than a vendor coming in to get their products in front of people. And so we have to understand and respect what their needs and wants are and facilitate around that. So the CyberX build out from the beginning, from day one, the DNA has always been, and it's our trademark, which is we are cyber. He is cyber, she is cyber, they are cyber, we are cyber. Everyone is. And so about 8 years ago, when we had launched this, or going into 9 years, I was like, there's going to be a time in the future, I don't know when, but I know it's coming up, where AI is going to be like this. Really, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be crazy at some point. And, you watch Skynet a lot and Terminator and that's in movies and all that. And you're like, something's going to happen crazy. Then you're like, okay, we're at 4G, 5G is coming down the pipeline. Eventually 6G is going to fall right in, which is right around the corner. And then, I did know a little bit about quantum computing, and I was like, this is really cool. I don't know what's going to happen here. What does that mean? And I knew that at some point, all three things are going to come to this inflection point of this catalytic, like world that we're living in right now. And we need a place where we can bring that information together, bring the people together, bring the community together, that's around government, public, private, academia, volunteers, students, that needs to kind of cultivate that ecosystem, just like that pond. So, right. And just to kind of end off, if you were like, hey, I want to create a small little pond, you can't just put water in, that's it. You got to ensure that you have all the right variables that allow that pond to grow into fishes and frogs and bees and the sun and the moon and all of that stuff. And so you have to look at multiple things, and you have to sometimes predict things ahead of time. So you have to be able to say, in 3 years, we're going to have a problem. We've taken all these students, trained thousands, hundreds of thousands of them all over the world. But at some point, AI is going to not need these students. So what are these students going to do that can't get a level 1 job? Well, now you have to put certain things in place that take some time to put together that change generations. So CyberX, at the end of the day, to sum it up, is a long-term project. It's to help build the Canadian cybersecurity community, which hopefully has a ripple effect around the world.
It's very, very ambitious. I like it. And I love the pond analogy, because I'm thinking of digging a pond in my garden soon. And I've got to provide all the right environment for all the right things to turn up. Jamie, you introduced me to Mahdi. How do you guys know each other, and what's the relationship there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was lucky enough to actually have the opportunity to participate in some of the CyberX events. And I think, everything that, was just described, is really what captured my attention about it. Because, it is about building a community, and it's about working together as a community to, respond to how things are changing. And so, I think it's being able to make this something that's visible, have people be able to work through these types of, incidents, engagements, that gamification element. I think it is something that's, bringing a lot more attention to cyber in the Canadian market, and exactly as you just said, hoping for the ripple effect to continue to happen. And then when I think about like how I kind of got into cyber, I can relate very well. However, my first one was an Apple II GS and Oregon Trail in full color. That's where I started.
Wow.
But then as you progress through it, kind of what I learned is I was always the curious person. I would get bored if I was, learning just another version of the same thing. As I went through college, had that same challenge. So because of that, did not get cyber trained, through that type of way. But it came on a little bit later in life to where someone was just like, well, you seem to be able to learn things well. Try this and see how it works. And so I actually started on the IT side, pivoted to cyber, and haven't looked back since, because it's never boring. So it's and exactly, like being able to dive into the stuff with AI, quantum, all of that is definitely keeps you reading, keeps you challenged to learn new things. Because if you slack off for even a week or a month these days, all of a sudden you're very far behind.
You're 20 years behind. And what's interesting about Immersive, when Immersive did reach out, and we knew the organization because, when I typed up tabletop exercises on the internet, you kind of type these things up and you go, hey, what do we got? And I came across Immersive Labs, which is now known as Immersive. I was like, holy shoot, this is pretty cool, right? Because they're doing exactly, what Operation Defend the North is, which is a tabletop exercise where we simulate attacks. And then, Jamie and I got talking, and we were speaking the same language. I was like, oh my God, you guys get it. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. That's what we do for a living. We teach people war room simulation, and we teach people how to protect themselves pre and post, even after, and gap analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh my God. So we had this, it's called Operation Defend the North. Operation Defend the North is one of our events where we simulate attack on, last year's, or the one that Immersive was involved in, was on Canada's critical infrastructure. And we hosted a series of events that were made for public consumption. So for the viewers, very quickly, a tabletop exercise is a exercise, kind of like a fire drill. When you're a kid, you run fire drills. You run these for the purpose of simulation, to test. Teachers test them, schools test them, and then suddenly you're outside in the cold, and you see a fire truck pull up, and then they pull the horn up and they say, go back in. But what's great about that fire drill exercise is you remember it. As a kid, I still remember it. And everyone that you bring this up to always shakes their head and goes, I remember that. And so you hope when there is a fire, you pick up a couple of things in your head, which is stay calm, stay low, before you touch a door, don't, make sure. And all those things that kind of visually come into your head that you then see. a tabletop exercise in cybersecurity is a similar thing, which is to simulate an attack. And you can customize those attacks based on your organization, your level of who's attending, your technicality, et cetera, and then go through that as an exercise. It could be 1 day, 1 hour, 2 days, 10 minutes, but it's always about continuously practicing and building that out. And so when I saw Immersive, I was like, oh my God, they got the one. And then I saw the gamification, how you guys have brought those two together. It was a match made in heaven in terms of having them as a partner along the way. And what was really profound about Immersive, which was really cool, because you can have different vendors come in, you can have threat detection tool and this tool and that tool. Those are all great and they're phenomenal. People enjoy them and all of that. But what made Immersive, it was exactly what we're talking. So when someone's watching or listening online, what was cool about Immersive was we were able to give people access to the Immersive platform. So they were able to, while we were exercising in real life, what was happening, they were able to kind of play around and go through a simulation themselves, which was really cool. That was the power of Immersive and what you guys are doing. So kudos to you guys. It's a mutual benefit because you help, get the name out of what you guys do, which is why tabletop, why we should move from boring, and with all due respect to those that do this, but I'm sorry to say in today's world, that 2026 boring phishing email campaigns, which at some point, I don't even think we're gonna be doing emails. I mean, the last time I checked an email was probably a couple of months ago, because we have systems that do those things now, to now tabletop exercises, simulating, and especially today, and I'll end off with this final statement here. In today's world, you got to be constantly testing things out. And if you're not, you'll wake up one morning and everyone, here's the thing. And I speak to so many leaders. They're like, oh, we got this tool that does this, this, and this. And we got this new tool. Everyone's like, we got this new. Oh, we got this cool thing. Oh, we got this cool thing. Well, when's the last time you tested it? When's the last time you actually run a simulation of a fire and that tool suddenly there's some shadow AI that happened there, or it started writing prompts, or it did 20,000 different things that can possibly happen right now. Have you tested any of them? And they're like, oh yeah, we got an A. Okay, yeah. Well, this is where a tool like an immersive product allows organizations to autonomously run this, just on their own, or run this. And again, I'm not being paid by Immersive in any way, shape, or form.
Your check is in the post. Don't worry.
I would love to. But that's what's cool. So when you guys even did reach out about doing a podcast, and I get a lot, I do deny a lot just because, I'm very selective, but Immersive is one of those products that are very, very cool and in line with the DNA of gamification and immersive, no pun intended, immersive experiences.
Yeah.
Might have been a little bit as to why, we kind of built that into the name from the beginning. It just kind of worked. But no, I think to that, one thing I always appreciate, and this actually is what brought me to Immersive in the beginning, was as we like to say, it's the muscle memory that you build. So like, I think back to when I was the practitioner, it's, okay, great. I learned that tool. I've read that. I've done that vendor certification. I've read that book. Well, that's not the same as actually having to go in, do the investigation, respond to the threat, recover the environment. So being able to do that in a safe space, it has been huge. And then I think also when you think of, how things are changing, especially with AI, it's, yes, there are lots of great tools out there. Those tools are, necessary to react at machine speed when you have, the breakout time of different threats, dropping under 30 minutes now. Yeah, I think the record's under 30 seconds. I think the quickest data filtration they've now seen is under 4 minutes from initial compromise. People can't move that fast, so you do have to leverage, all of these great tools, but you also have to be aware of what AI can't do. It can't be trusted with complex judgment. It doesn't do that. It follows an algorithm. It doesn't have its own ethical framework. We have to make those decisions. And so that's where you have to have that sort of split between AI can do wonderful things. The people are still actually necessary to make those critical calls, especially when, we're going to shut down this server or this environment. Well, what's actually the effect to operations or to people? Think of that, whether it's in the critical infrastructure field, the healthcare, you can have very serious effects of just shutting something down. The AI doesn't view it like that. And so that's, I think, where it's critical. We have to make sure that we're getting people used to making those decisions before they're, put in that actual real fire, so it's running through lots of fire drills that will help them fundamentally, think better about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the one thing that never changes throughout all of this is that there are humans in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And, our technology doesn't evolve quite as quick as computers and AI. And so are you already planning, Mahdi, are you already planning quite a lot of AI content in these sorts of things going forward? What's your plan to educate and upskill people on the AI side of cybersecurity?
Yeah, so we signed a great partnership with SANS, one of the leading global cybersecurity certification organizations out there, and there's many great ones. But we signed a partnership with SANS, and what we rolled out is something called Now AI, and really the objective behind that is war room simulation workshops. And so we actually just ran one a couple of days ago, and we got one coming up as well. And so the thought process is, imagine this, and I think you guys are going to love this, is you have a scenario. So tabletop exercise, right? You take tabletop exercise, but let's flip this upside down and let's gamify it and let's immersively bring it to another level. And so everyone shows up at 9 a.m. So imagine a full day. You got your executive leadership team, for example, that's come in from let's say, academic institution, and they show up at 9 o'clock and they're put into pods, and those pods are based on their their teams and so on and so forth. And at 9:01, there's a news report, breaking news. What has happened? Something. Shit has hit the wall. And whatever that scenario is, and in particular, for example, in this situation, we ran a deep fake AI sort of situation from, your typical CEO sort of, send this email, blah, blah, blah. And that cascaded, just that one click cascades into Twitter feeds, customers losing access, people being pissed off, cascading in. So we kind of run a 9 to 10 a.m., imagine for a moment, simulation of the world going, catching on fire. From 10 to 11, or, let's just say an hour, and I'm just building this out, in terms of what, for the viewers, to simplify this, we bring in crisis simulators. So, for example, for the upcoming one that we have the CISO of NATO, we have a person from the Pentagon and Department of Defense that actually come in, that actually live this world, that come in and go, this is the pressure, this is the crisis. So the average human bear that's sitting in their desk and drinking their coffee that Monday morning is thrown off, like, oh my God, this is real now. So yeah, I saw this fictitious video, my heart rate's up a little bit, but now I got two people that do this for a living that are just going at it. And now we're making them make decisions. What are you going to do? Who are you going to call? Who are you going to email? Oh, the phone line's out. Oh, this is out. Now what are you going to do? Now what are you going to do? Now you got to start thinking on the spot. And then we move into, after lunch, we move into sort of a cyber range, depending on if it's technical, non-technical, who's attending, what's happening, so on and so forth, where they get to, break computers or actually look at logs and analyze things, and depending on what it is. And then we move into your lessons learned, discussions on where those gaps were. We tie that into back to SANS certification. So people get three things out of this when it comes to today's learning. Number one, it's quick and to the point. So it's immersive, it's fun, it's engaging, it's exciting. It's not one guy standing in front or person standing in front of a screen, flipping through slides the whole 8 hours while you yawn and think about what you're going to eat at 7 p.m. It's you got to be, you're in for 8 hours, boom, straight, or 7 hours, whatever the case may be. So number one is immersive. No pun intended. Number two is you walk away with tangible information, whether it's an update to your playbook, whether it's, Microsoft Copilot prompts that you can utilize at your organization, whatever it is, you walk away with some tools to deal with crap now. So again, called Now AI, because you can't talk about things 6 months ago or even 6 hours ago, because the threat has changed, the prompt has changed, the tool has changed, the scenario has changed, even though your playbook says this, but you might have to go this way. So that's number two. And then number three, you walk away with some CPE credits, some credentials, some courses, some, points and lessons and so on and so forth, but certification that you can kind of take back and hold your hat on. So that's what we have brought Again, combining gamification, combining education, combining security awareness training, combining, experts in the industry. And just to kind of bring this to a soft landing, we had the crisis simulators there in the room. We had subject matter experts. So with the great relationship with SANS and with CyberX, we're able to bring in subject matter experts. So if it's the academic institutions and it's we're bringing in technical folks that live and breathe in the academia, that deal with the threats every single day. And it goes right back to that analogy of the healthcare industry, right? If I got a problem with my teeth, I'm going to bring in a dentist, not a neurosurgeon. And I'm going to bring in the best dentist in the world. So we bring in the subject matter experts. And then just to layer that below that, but not equally important, is the lead instructors from SANS. These are people that are practitioners, that are trainers, that are educators, that come in and provide that mapping, that credentials, that education, that kind of builds this whole thing together. And what's great is it's not 2 years ago curriculum or even 6 months ago curriculum. It's today. It's what's happening right now.
Do you think people are getting overwhelmed with AI?
Oh, yeah.
Do you actually, going back to what you said about the younger generation being super fast on computer games and being able to deal with lots of things at once, it kind of almost sounds like the younger generation is going to be a lot more prepared to deal with the fast nature of AI. But I know, even just from seeing the news, it's easy to become overwhelmed with the hype and the stories of new cybersecurity capabilities releasing every day. Are you seeing any level of exhaustion in the industry?
Yeah, this is called the resilience room, right? What's resilience? It's the ability to adapt, right? Number one, recover and really kind of at the end of the day, emerge stronger. So does the younger generation, are they already adapted to the speed? Yeah, but how do they recover? And I was with a couple of senior leaders yesterday, and we were talking about AI and Skynet and the world, and just one of those evening conversations over Starbucks where you go down a dark rabbit hole and tinfoil hats and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's like a spaghetti bowl of just a mishmash of everything. Everyone's just run and built out everything. And depending on your prompt and my prompt and a whole bunch of craziness and which LLM I used and all, you just got a mishmash of crap. The question is, what happens when this card starts to fall? That's the scary part. So, to answer your question, if anyone can give you an answer, I would love to meet them of what's going to happen next. Because I right now think it's kind of like when they first came up with the wheel, right? Or when they first came up with like phones and the first communication was sent through Morse code. Or, when the first airplane, we didn't know what was going to happen after, or back then people just kind of had ideas, but these were all physical. You can actually see a physical car when Edison Ford created the first car, and you can go, oh, okay, that does that. And it moves like that. And you can kind of go, okay, wheel, we get the wheel, we get the transformation of that. This, what we're sitting on, I thought I figured it out. I thought I was like, oh, it's machine learning and, it's just algorithms running. But something's got me feared along the way, and that is, wait a minute, I consider it alive. I know it's a crazy statement, but I do believe AI is alive. Now, alive, like as in, does it breathe and sleep and eat and, fall in love? I don't know about the fall in love part, but maybe it does. But does it eat, breathe, and sleep? No, it doesn't sleep. Does it eat? Yeah, it eats something that is pretty crazy. What it eats, it can change a whole city. It can cause panic in Utah with, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of square feet of data centers. So it does eat. It eats something else. It breathes something else. And it's unknown. So there is a huge unknown.
Yeah. I actually like some of those, kind of analogies used there when you think about AI, because that is the challenge is, as you said, you can see how things have changed, like, oh, well, here's how the cars evolved. Well, AI is changing. We can't directly see it, but we see the impact of it. And then I think what's also interesting of that, and this is one thing that, you think of is, how does that normalize that change? So if you think back to travel, well, you go back 100 years, well, a little bit more than 100 now, but you might have to jump on the plane, on a ship in order to get from Europe to Americas. Well, go back skip ahead a few years, we could jump on a plane and do it. Well, we've now normalized how easy it is to get wherever we want in the world. Well, when those systems go down, it's all of a sudden a lot harder, and we now think that all of a sudden we're isolated. Well, I think with AI, it's you look at it is a super powerful tool. It's whether you're using it within cyber for defense or offense, or you're just using it for your normal day to day. It's getting people able to do things significantly quicker. What might have taken you a week, you can now get done in an hour. Well, but then what happens if we normalize always expecting that hour, and then it breaks, and now all of a sudden you have that delay of a week? And depending on what service that's impacting or what, it can have a very large effect. And I think that's one thing that everyone's aware of, how much AI can help, but it's that little bit I think is also going to be an issue, especially with the newer generation coming in, because that's a struggle they haven't had to deal with yet. They don't remember the dial-up phones, where you actually had to use the rotary dial and wait to dial a second number.
Yeah, wait, and then I think a lot of unique and very. I sit at a very interesting intersection. I like to say it like from an analogy standpoint. If there's an arena, I'm in the middle of that arena, like right at the 50-yard line, right in the center. In terms of what I mean by that is, I get to meet, see, and speak to a lot of very interesting people from various walks of life and paths. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been sitting with a lot of like CEOs and executives at the board level that are talking. They're not talking technical conversations. They're talking about like stuff that can take down like big things and cause major havoc that we're living in. So are people being exhausted in the consulting firms, the big fours out there? Yeah, speak to any of them, and we can go down the rabbit hole of what problems they're facing. But that's a great indication of what's happening, because now you have, and I'll just, for example, a couple of days ago, I was with a guy, using HubSpot, almost spending $20,000 a month with HubSpot, CRM, he decided to build his own CRM, full-fledged, right? Internally within 2 weeks. So now I asked him why. And they're like, because we want to build our own, right? Because we can. I could just write a prompt and we can all build our own and it makes sense, because now you can customize that HubSpot or that CRM to your own, because you couldn't. You call up HubSpot, they're gonna be like, we're gonna charge you $1 million to change this and change that. We can't do that, sir. But now I can create my own HubSpot. I can type in, create my own HubSpot, and boom, within 35 seconds, I have my own HubSpot. In theory, right? Not practical. But after obviously 6 weeks of a bunch of smart people doing that, you can have your own little system that's pretty good, security, all the guardrail. But the problem is now, and this is what I laughed and I asked him, I go, what if your business changes, your model changes, and now you have to do something completely different? Are you planning on going into that prompt and saying, hey, go back to the 50,000 messages of information. I need that one piece changed. Your whole thing's going to change. Everything's going to crash and burn, because unfortunately that's what ends up happening. Or there's a lot of, we can't do that, or we can't do that. So are we right now, early stages, are we reaching that? Yeah. And then the second part is, I do believe we are heading towards a certain point where my $147 subscription that allows me to build out stuff that should cost $50,000 to build out for $147, which costs ChatGPT or whoever out there, Claude, maybe $6,000 because of that information and all that coming back and forth. At what point do they go, that's it? Because right now it's subsidized. At what point do they go, you know what? No.
Well, I had a interesting idea that it might end up all moving to more native or local LLMs, or technology. So businesses have almost like a rack of Mac Minis or whatever, and they completely control their own. Who was I listening to? They made the reference to how it used to be mainframes, and you would pay to access the mainframe, and now with cloud, it's like we're going back to a pay to access mainframe model. So now perhaps we're going to swing back to having on-site managed AI technologies that you can completely control, and you're not paying per credit, token even.
You're still so it's like Notebook LLM. For the viewers out there, Google launched a really cool product called Notebook LLM, and what Notebook LLM does for the viewers very quickly is it's kind of like having your own LLM in a weird way. Meaning, if I upload things about YouTube videos about Operation Defend the North, and I upload files, it will only stay within that box. So my prompts, whatever I need, pulls from that. I can pull from certain website links, put it in there, but it will stay within that. If I do the same thing on Claude or anywhere else, it's going to pull from everywhere else and everywhere else, right? So that's just for the viewers, just to quickly understand what Notebook LLM is. So I absolutely agree, small language model, mini data centers, I guess really at the end of the day that people are going to have to local hosts and stuff. Is that possibly going to be where we're going to have to, because we can't build out data centers in space right now. And that's a little bit difficult to do, even though that's a brilliant idea. But the question still remains is, what about like the big companies? What are they going to do? And what about the ones that then connect with multiple, like what is the United States Army going to do? What is Amazon going to do? Because they can't put a Mac Mini under their desk.
Oh,
Sure.
And I think with that too, what's always interesting is it's a cycle in a sense, kind of that is, we all started on-prem, things got pushed to the cloud, it went hybrid, now we went, back this way, now it might bring stuff back. And each one of those has its own, share of risks, concerns, and benefits. And I think that cycle is just always going to continue. There's always going to be some type of pivot. But then I think, your point on like, well, what are the large organizations going to do? Well, the challenge with them is exactly what you said. They can't have that many Mac Minis. It's not physically possible, but then they also have so many connections everywhere else. They have to figure out how to better manage those. And I think what we'll also see is those same challenges are going to start to spread down to the mid-market at some point. They're going to start to go down to, your small businesses, because they're using these tools at some level, and it's just going to, there's always a progression as you go through it. And so it's an interesting time and an exciting time because of it, but it's also a very challenging time that's keeping a lot of CISOs and security teams up at night, because on top of all that, you have to secure it all, and your teams have to be able to respond to it if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's a lot more complicated to secure, right? Because if there's a lot of black boxes being used in various departments that are linking up to other black boxes, it's almost like we need a new way of thinking about cybersecurity.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, I don't know if you guys like, and again, going back to the analogies of the first, telephone, or when phone lines were being built back in the days and lines were being put under, or even the car. Think about it. So someone bought a car off the lot back in the days, right? I'm talking Edison Ford sort of time, and went home, in some village or some city or town. And now you got a problem with your car. What would happen? Right. So you had experts that were learning on the fly. They would show up, on a horse or some information, and they would get to where you are to fix your car with the tools that they have, and they have to MacGyver it through. They would like look around. If they don't have that tool that they brought with them, it's not like walking into a dealership now and having everything. Even today, you'll have mechanics that are like, hey, I can't work on a Porsche, but I can work on a domestic vehicle because of the expertise. So now it comes down to expertise. Are we training the next generation to help, just like if I want to get an internet at my home, there's still a truck that has to come by, even though they don't have to come inside my house, that has to do something for 5 minutes or 2 minutes outside. So, and that's an expert that does something. Are we going to be into that world, maybe, Jamie, Sam, where now we're going to have these young generations, and maybe they're robots that's flying on a drone that come in and then they fix whatever it is. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But at some point, someone has to fix something or repair something and call tech support.
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge we're trying to figure out is exactly how do we manage that? Who do we call? Do we call the Ghostbusters? I don't know. But there's one interesting a metric that came out of a conversation last week in an event I was at on the West Coast, and it was actually talking about kind of the shift to agentic AI and what that's meaning in terms of how do we control it. And one of the organizations was saying that for every employee that they have, what they're starting to see is that one person might be spawning 50 or 100 new agents, if not more. And now each one of those is something that you have to manage, secure, control access to. And it's just all of a sudden, that spider web that we thought we had control of has now just gotten so much more complex. So it's, we're now moving from our traditional 2D chess to beyond 3D to now 4D.
Well, I'm fascinated by the idea of agents being treated with identity in cybersecurity systems the same as humans, right? Like we're treating them like individuals now, the AI agents.
But I want to go back to like, and I know we're kind of circling to the top of the hour at some point, and we could do this, and it's kind of going back. When my dad found out that I was using the internet, one of the things he said is don't put your pictures up, don't put your personal information up, don't put anything. And for the longest time, I was scared to put, and we were all scared. For those that are around the internet world, you were scared. You wouldn't put anything up. You would put, and then at some point, we just hit that button and said, yes, put everything up, share everything. And now we've come to a point where the other day I said, yeah, go ahead, read all my emails and send out all my emails.
Wow.
Well, I've gone from don't put nothing up to just be me and answer all my emails. And that is scary, because it's exactly what Jamie's saying. It's exactly what you said, which is you now have up to, I think it's 78% of organizations are now, last year was 55, now it's up 78% of organizations are now currently adopting or using some sort of AI for their organization. And exactly at some point, I think in the next 6 months, 5 months, you're going to have each organization, each person having 10, 15, 20, 30. Why not? If I can have something do 20 different things for me, life makes a lot better. Now, I don't know if anyone ever watched the movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
So at the end, what is it, right? It's a bunch of people, and you always see these movies, the Jetsons and all of that, right? You see everyone's about 1,000 pounds sitting. They have this cup that has a drink that is food, everything, and they don't move. They just sit there and they have a screen, and everything does everything for them. Are we getting there? Well, as of right now, we're starting to trend that way.
It's the opposite though, right? That if something is there doing all my work for me on my computer, I'm going to be outside dancing in the sunlight, right? Like I'm not going to be sitting in a chair anymore. I'm going to be making music. I'm going to be, exploring the more human creative aspects of life, hopefully, right?
That's what you're hoping for. And I feel, and I have, I think that, and if you look at generation X, Y, Z, beta, right? And this is, I think, one of the most profound things for your viewers to go to is look at the silent boomers and go through the generation, because each generation has different social, music, education, learning, technology, and they kind of go like this ebbs and flow. And I'm hopeful. And, I'm hopeful that the next generation, because our generation right now, I feel like yes, we know about the singing in the rain and dancing in the rain, because we used to play hockey till 8 o'clock at night when our parents would say, hey, come in, because that was the life that we used to live. And then there was this weird other generation that just stayed in, and we had vitamin D deficiency and no one was going out in the sun anymore. I'm hoping that this next generation of young people that are 4 years old, 5 years old, are going to look back at the last two generations and go, you guys all got it wrong. We now have systems in place that can do everything. So let's go out and dance in the rain. Because what you guys have done is all wrong, which is sit in front of a computer and go, build me this, build me this, build me this, build me this, because that's the ability that I have now. Last night I came up with 2 ideas, boom, put it in, build me this, do this, create this. And suddenly I'm not outside in the rain, even though it's raining outside today. I should be outside in the rain because, technology is there to do that. So I think the reason why we're at this weird haircut mode, where there's this generational change that's happening, where I'm hopeful that alpha and beta, the generations that are down the pipeline here, that are right now babies using, my 2-year-old, 3-year-old know about AI and talk to it like its best friend, are going to then realize, like WALL-E did, that you got to dance in the rain.
That's as profound a place as any to end the podcast, I think. Thank you so much to Mahdi for coming on and sharing all his insights. Thanks to Jamie for co-hosting. Hopefully we'll get him back again soon with more guests. See you next time.